There are some people who complain about the world they live in, and there are those who metaphorically roll up their sleeves and make a difference. My guest is definitely one of the latter. In the not-so-sleepy town of Kapunda in South Australia's mid-north lives a man who has held the elected position of Mayor of Light Regional Council for over 10 years. His passion for the local community and his local environment is admirable. My guest today is Bill O'Brien. Hello, Bill.
Hi, Julia.
Welcome
nice to be here.
And you too. Welcome to Footprints in South Australia. Thank you for joining me for a chat.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure.
You have described your family as doing it tough when you were growing up. How tough was it, and was it a happy childhood despite that?
It was a different one. I grew up in the inner suburbs of Melbourne in the Fitzroy district, and it was pretty tough in those days because Melbourne was a very different place. My dad was a painter on the tramways, and Mum was a bit of everything. You know, she worked in a lolly factory, so she was pretty popular locally with the kids. And a very generous woman, and she'd bring home lollies, and the kids would be at my place and whatever. Our house wasn't terribly glamorous, in fact, quite the opposite. And Mum wasn't a terribly good housekeeper, nor was Dad, so the place was a shambles pretty much. But that was growing up, and I had a younger brother. It was just the two of us.
So you're well known for your long history of public service, in particular serving for over 10 years as the Mayor of Light Regional Council. Were there any early influences in your life that led you towards public service?
I'm not sure, Julia. I've been a very fortunate person, I suppose. I've always been a little bit of a leader, whether I like it or not. It's happened to me throughout my life. From an early age, I was always captain of the footy team. I was captain of our little cat gang that we had as kids, you know. We used to dress up and go and haunt the neighbours and do terrible things, the whole cat gang. But always seemed to take a leading role, probably because I had this crazy mind and wanted to do things all the time. But I've always enjoyed working with the community and to be able to give back a little bit too, because life's been pretty good to me.
Now, I've read that the Kapunda Council has developed a unique water reuse program that I believe you're quite proud of. Is that something that you were personally involved with?
Certainly was. The Light Regional Council, which I'm mayor of, is a big patch of earth north of Hewitt. We take in Hewitt right up to Maribel, right across to Truro. We don't take in Truro, but there, right across to Roseworthy. It's a big patch, and 46% of the Barossa Valley. And water, of course, is liquid gold. And we tried to set up a subsidiary with our surrounding councils, and we got a grant from federal government of $11.5 million to build this scheme, and we had to raise the other $11.5 million. Well, one by one, those other councils dropped off, and we were left carrying the can. And we really believed in this project, so we decided we'd go ahead. And it took the councillors their breath away a little bit, because our annual budget's about $25 million, and this was a project worth $25 million. But not only did we succeed in completing that project, that project now brings this council in a little over $1 million a year in revenue. So it's enabled us to keep our rates down and so forth, and encouraged not only the elected members to start to look at what we do as a council, the staff. It empowered them, to sort of say, right, we can do this. And now our council, I could boastfully say, is probably the most progressive in the state. And we've got the track record to prove it. It just keeps going. And we're looking now, for example, at borrowing another $15 million, asking the federal government to stump up and state government to stump up the same amount. And we're going to spend that on our country roads, on a lot of other infrastructure. Further, we brought our roads program and our footpath program forward 15 years, where people were living on these dirt roads, and Pete can tell you about some of the footpaths and things that we didn't have in Kapunda as one town, for example, and the rest. Unsatisfactory conditions for all of those years. We've fixed that in every town. They've all got footpaths, they've all got curb and guttering, and they've got lovely roads. And we did that in 3 instead of 15. So that there's a good track record there. And it's lovely to lead an organisation that want to do these things. We have a great council. This is my 3rd elected council, and there's been some minor changes. And there's always one there that you could do without. They just have a different name. But quite frankly, I'm pleased that even that one's there, because you need someone like that. You need the opinions and the various sort of attitudes to projects that come up. But we're really kicked goals. It's fantastic. Yeah, I'm loving it.
That's great. It's a great thing, a legacy really for all of you, for yourself, but also all of the members of the council who've been part of something really powerful.
Absolutely. We've got the best CEO in the state, and having been a CEO of a council, I can understand his role. And this guy is just amazing, because he's an entrepreneur as well as a person that empowers his staff, and he supports them.
So you've mentioned that you've been a CEO yourself, and that was some time ago. You were the General Manager of the Central Darling Shire Council. You were based in Wilcannia in regional New South Wales. It was interesting that you shared with me Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders make up over 70% of that population. So how much were you able to connect with the Indigenous culture while you lived there?
I had a strong connection with the Indigenous culture. One of the reasons I really wanted to be there. And it can be disappointing, like in any role like that, it has its moments. But Wilcannia was a very challenging town. But our shire took in 4 towns. It took in White Cliffs, which is an opal mining town, Ivanhoe, which is a pastoral town, and Menindee, which is the lake system and all of that. And Menindee has a very strong Indigenous population as well. White Cliffs not so much, and Ivanhoe a little bit. So the Indigenous focus was certainly there in that whole shire. The shire was 53,000 square kilometres. When I first arrived in Wilcannia, I was there as a tourism and economic development manager. You think, what? Most people just shook their head as a tourism officer in Wilcannia. However, about 8 months into my contract there, the general manager of the shire was killed in a car smash, one that I was supposed to be in, and I waved them goodbye that Saturday night as I was cleaning the local pool. And they took off. I was bad from the night before, too many Rossa Shirazes, I think it was at the time. And they went and she was killed that night, and it was terrible. To cut a long story short, I was not long after that appointed general manager, and I continued in that role for 8 years. The council hadn't put an annual report in for four years. No annual reports, so they were on the bones. But because of where they are, what they were, and just a government sort of handout area, no one said anything. Till I got to a Shires conference in Sydney at one stage, and I talked to the director of local government, and I introduced myself as a new GM, and he said, yes, I know. And I said, that's good. And I said, we haven't put an annual report in for 4 years. And he said, I know. He said, I said, could we sit down and have a little talk? And he said, of course. So we had this little talk, and he said, okay. He said, I can understand where you're coming from. He said, look, I'll tell you what. He said, I'll give you a ring on Monday when you're back in the office. I said, oh, that'd be good. So being a little naive, and I'm sitting there waiting for the phone to ring, of course, and it was only long after that I realised he was never going to ring. He's not going to tell you can break the rules. What he was telling me was do it. So we did it, and we fixed up the annual reports, just put a montage of pictures and things together and said, there it is, and they ticked off on it. Within 4 years of that, we won the top shire, most progressive shire in the state, and that was presented to me and our mayor and another councillor at the Sydney University by Linda Burney, who's still in Parliament. Yeah, so we're very proud of that, from that very low base where it was just a nothing place and nobody cared, to all of a sudden people did care. And I think the Aboriginal people could start to see things were happening around the place and they were being spoken to in a correct way. I think I was the only white fella ever in that town to be on the Community Working Party, which I reluctantly went on to, because my point was, it's your working party. I want you to tell us what you want us to do, not us to tell you through this method. But they couldn't get that. And they said, no, Bill, we want you there and we want you to be able to vote. And I said, well, look, I said, I'm uncomfortable voting. I said, it's your... No. He said, I'll tell you what, we'll talk about it at the next meeting. And I said, well, okay. Well, that never happened. Surprise, surprise.
So really, it sounds that was unusual for the Indigenous community to be... to have somebody who wanted to listen to them rather than tell them how things should be. It probably took some time for them to get used to that as well. Absolutely. That's the one thing we don't do terribly well. We're good at handouts and all of those things that are very generous and whatever, but it's not solving the problem. We've got to listen more and understand. Sometimes there's two sides to a story. And I've seen some of the stories that I was told up there in various things and things that they wanted to do were absolutely fascinating. You think, wow, why didn't we think about that? One old fellow said to me one day, he said, Billy, he said, you white fellas, he said, you're mad. I said, why? He said, you want to work 37 hours a week? I says, why? He said, we go fishing. And it sort of says it all, you know. You think, well, why do we work 37 hours a week? Why don't we work 20? And spread the joy, give more people a job. But the Aboriginal people do that. Yes.
And we don't,
yes.
Because we're too smart.
The first time I questioned, I suppose, our structures was when I started to learn a little bit about Indigenous and Torres Strait Islander history and saw that same sort of attitude. And it's quite difficult, I think, for us. We've grown up in a European society with that mindset and work ethic and that cultural pressure. But why can't we do it differently? It's a good question, isn't it?
Yeah. We set up a program at one stage on the main corner of the town where the service station had been burnt down. An accident happened one night and it was burnt down. And we set up this program and it was working particularly well and it ran out of money. And all the guys who were sitting over the road drinking their VBs in the gutter were working on this program and getting things done. And we ran out of money, or were running out of money, and I got to the federal member and said, look, we need to keep this going. Oh, I'll do my best. And I said, see over the road, there's nobody there. I said, next time you come down, if you haven't done anything about it, there will be. They'll be back, sitting there, drinking cans of VB. That's not where we want to be. So we managed to do some more. But in that same project, the community were empowered. They had the paper on the ground. They drew what they wanted there. And little Tommy was a guy that was part of it. And Tommy had MS and he had a few problems. Lovely little guy. He was as round as he was high. But he was a lovely fella. And he always sort of had a bit of a presence in all of this. And one Friday afternoon, Tommy came up to me and he said, the boys, they're not being paid. I said, no. He said, no, not being paid. I said, oh, better fix that. And he said, oh, you Uncle Bill, Brother Bill, you better pay. You'll pay. Look at the boys. So we were able to fix it, thank goodness. I don't know how, but it worked. And from that time on, Tommy became the boss of the whole thing. All the participants thought Tommy was God, you know. Oh, good on you, Tommy. You tell him, Tommy. And Tommy was a sort of the showpiece of this whole thing. But it runs out of money and what saddens me now, I was there for 8 years in Wilcannia, and Marilyn was there also for at least seven of those. And we did it pretty tough in lots of ways. And I look at the place now and the council's in administration. And you think, what happened? Someone didn't listen. And that's all it's about, isn't it? It's about listening. And someone's come in with the bright ideas, I'll fix this. Fixed it all right.
What a shame.
Sad.
Now, I'd like to ask you about this photograph that you have brought in today. The 1990 Festival City Marathon.
Yeah.
There you were. What's that, 2 hours, 57 minutes and 8 seconds.
Yeah.
Look at that. Okay.
Yeah, running's been probably a big part of my life, and it was only late in life that I started to run marathons, and I I got talked into that by a friend who actually lives in Kapunda now. And he talked me into running in this Gawler to Adelaide marathon, which I did, and I was still smoking at the time as well, so it didn't help. And I kept at it because I thought I sort of liked doing that. I liked the distance events because they'd bring the fast runners back to you and all of that sort of. And I had a bit of a chance of getting personal goals in something that was measurable. And 2 hours 57, the 3 hour limit, probably only 10% of marathon runners in the world ever run under 3 hours. So it's a pretty fair performance, that, and that's one I won't forget. And my old triathlon coach, I used to do a lot of triathlons as well back then, and he was a great competitor too. There he is there.
Oh, he's right there in the photo. He's there to see you get across the finish line.
Look up at the clock. So that's had a significance to me because I've done a lot of multi-day events. In fact, not so long back, only 4 years ago now, thereabouts, I did the Big Red Run across the Simpson Desert. And that was a tricky one, 6 days. And the Big Red Sand Dunes are big. And it was a fascinating sort of journey. But I did that and finished that. But that's the last of the big ones, and that will be the last of the big ones. It's just too time-consuming on you. I knew I had to train hard to even finish. But why I set that goal is because I'd been drinking a lot and I'd had a heart attack and I'd done a few things, and at one stage couldn't run between 2 Stobie poles. So I'd let things go pretty well. But no, we've got to do something about it. And so we had this goal to run this Simpson Desert Big Red Run, and we did it. But it sort of changed my lifestyle considerably, and I haven't had a drink now for nearly 4 years.
Wow.
And that's a lot for me because I used to drink a lot.
Drink a lot.
A lot.
Well, are you still running?
Yes, I go out just about every day. When I get up in the morning, I go out and I take a picture and I write a little story. I do that every day, and I've done that for 6 years. The last 2, I think last year I didn't miss one single day. For all sorts of reasons, sometimes it wasn't exactly going out there, but I got a nice view from where we live of sunrises and so forth, so it's easy to sort of get carried away with what you're seeing in the morning. So I do that, and writing a little story has given me a chance to sort of learn to write and do that better, because I've got to do that. And I've always written my own speeches, always written my own reports, but always struggle with it because I'm not educated. And this has sort of helped in getting words together and sentences and everything else. So it's a bit selfish, but I think a lot of people enjoy it. They sort of crack it and have a look at it.
So they watch, they wake up every morning and see
what
where you've been today.
Yeah, it's a bit like that.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes, there are a lot of people out there that would be connecting with that perhaps there's something they're looking forward to. So
they can all do it, that's right.
Yeah.
And then again, you say, come on, you put something up. Have a go.
Yeah.
It's not hard.
It's inspiring.
It's time and just a bit of effort.
Now, I've also noticed that you have some tattoos, and I believe you were actually received these at a very young age. Can you tell me a little bit about them?
Yes, I probably had older friends, and a few of them were bikies and all of that as I was growing up as a kid. I was pretty adventurous, I suppose, and they took me into Alf in Flinders Lane in Melbourne and said, come on Alf, give this kid a tattoo, and no way, because I was much too young. In the end they said, you will, and he did, but it had to be something with mother written on it. And I didn't have a terribly great relationship with my mother, but I accepted that, and I was so proud of that tattoo, and had a tape on it that night to go to a party, and I took the tape off to show everybody and all of that, and it was a big deal. And tattoos were amongst a certain element of the community, not for everybody, and that's why I think it's a part of my life story, because as I got older, I stopped getting tattoos because they are very addictive. I stopped when I was going to get this huge tattoo on my chest, and the guy said to me, Bill, you'll get pneumonia sitting in this place at night time, so we better wait till we've got some heaters and so forth. Well, that very week I got pneumonia, and I was in hospital for about 3 months. It was quite serious. And I never ever had another tattoo, never. It broke the cycle, thank goodness. But what I perhaps think about it is all my life I've had to wear long sleeves and things like that to do a lot of things. And it was a stigma, it really was, growing up. In certain elements it was hero stuff, but in most, in the important things, it was really quite challenging. And when people, for the first time, seeing you had tattoos, you can see them almost take their breath away. Where now it's nothing. But I would never, ever encourage anyone to get a tattoo, ever.
So it sounds to me, Bill, that from a very young age, you've been a leader and an inspirer of others, and you've taken that superpower and used it for good. And
well, I'm not rich though.
I'm sure, though, that you've had many opportunities in life that other people would have been very pleased to have had those opportunities. So,
been very, very fortunate, and I'm a great believer in what will be, and karma as well. And I think sometimes you take out what you put in, and if you keep putting in, sometimes you'll get a few knockbacks, but in the end, something happens.
Well, Bill, it's been such a pleasure, absolutely wonderful for me to have this opportunity to meet you and chat with you and hear about some of the things that you've done and that you've enjoyed in your life. So thank you so much for being part of Footprints in South Australia.
Nice to be here.